French.
Certain cultures just have a vibe to their art, you know? Like, you can take one look at most visual novels and take a pretty good guess at whether or not it's Japanese, American, or American trying to look Japanese. In the same way, there's some games you look at and you go, that's a French game, isn't it? One such game would be E.Y.E, Divine Cybermancy. E.Y.E, Divine Cybermancy was developed by a small team of French Half-Life modders in 2011. It is a first-person shooter, immersive sim, RPG, with some fun twists. That's the best way I can describe it in mortal terms. This is one of the craziest games I've ever played. We kind of just have to dive right in. Right off the bat, you'll notice this game's horrendously long load times. The next thing you'll notice is the character creator, which is like none I've seen before. You've got a lot of stats on the side here, but you don't put points into them individually. Instead, you have a selection of genes, which each have strengths and weaknesses correlating to different stats. It isn't a simple addition or subtraction either. I'm pretty sure the way it works is that each gene raises or lowers the minimum and maximum for the stats it affects, because you can infinitely reroll until you get mostly in the green. I already know what kind of game this is going to be when I see categories like mental balance or suprahuman reflex. Also, most of the genes are named after the emanations in the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, a form of ancient Judaic mysticism. After creating our character, we find ourselves in a dark, surreal valley. You might notice that all of the voice acting is in French, but it's okay. I mean, everything's translated, right? Yeah, it'll be fine. The game is really pushing a mysterious angle. Our character mentions killing their mentor, but not being his murderer? I suppose it'll be explained later. After going through the portal, we awaken in a cave with a character called Commander Rimana talking to us. Perhaps this sequence in the valley was a dream we had while we were knocked out? He tells us to open the character menu, and oh boy, there is so much information here. 5 different columns of actions, including a dozen or so things we haven't been introduced to yet. It's complete information overload, not to mention the other tabs here, including your stats, a grid-based inventory system, cyber implants that need K. Oh, don't forget your Brazouf counter. You know what? Let's move on. This is making my head spin. We find a weapon by some dead bodies who look like our character, and why is the use key enter? By default, you pick things up and interact using enter. Why? I had to rebind this to alt because Q and E are for leaning. Now, if you're a game designer, how would you introduce the player to combat? Maybe you put them in a low-stakes combat scenario to get them comfortable with the feel of movement and shooting and slashing. Have you ever heard of YouTube tutorials? They just tell you to open the tutorial menu. where there are video guides for all the major mechanics of the game. It doesn't even take you straight to the one they want you to watch. You have to find the firearm and melee sections. Remember when I said that this game is French? Now, like, I don't mind reading subtitles and all that, not an issue. But I'd at least like for them to be translated well. I get that it's a small team, but like, buy to a Cellar? This might sound like a nitpick right now, but it becomes a much bigger deal as the game goes on. Our first taste of combat is when a monster ambushes us in the cave. I didn't really know what was happening, I just started blasting. What is this? Watch the cyber jump tutorial? And nothing here says cyber jump. I'm looking for cyber jump, and all I see is cyber implants. Is that what you mean? It is. We make it to an elevator and take it all the way up to where an extraction team should be meeting us. Hang on. Oh, it goes straight to the bottom. What was the point of this ladder? We meet an ally at the top who gives us access to an armory before sending us through some tunnels. He mentions the Federation, who I assume is some kind of enemy. Wouldn't be a French game without calling cops pigs, let's go! Armories are used throughout the game to resupply and swap out your arsenal. Here, we get a peek at some of the weapons you can unlock. The game uses a Resident Evil style inventory and even has an encumbrance system, but they call it malus? I noticed this in the character creation too, when talking about stat penalties. I had to figure that out from context because they just decided to use their own special word for penalty for some reason. Oh, what's it? Oh, what, malice is a French word? What's it mean? God damn, why didn't you just translate that? I know I shouldn't be scrutinizing an indie game for polish, but the text goes off screen. We emerge from the tunnels into broad daylight and this industrial riverway. The atmosphere is kinda nice. Immediately I'm shot at, which ruins the mood, but at the same time there's an interesting kind of contrast between a bloody firefight and peaceful music. I have no idea if that was intentional. Anyway, the shooting. One thing you've probably noticed by now that really impeded the gameplay for my first session was the constant drops in frame rate. It's not a problem with my PC. I should be able to run a Source Engine game from 2011 no problem. The game is just weirdly optimized. Even after lowering my graphics settings, I was still getting frame drops. It makes my first taste of combat very uncomfortable. I end up slicing through some guys, but not before dying and using up one of my resurrectors. Yes, I uses what's essentially a lives system. I've leveled up, and after the experience I've just had, you bet I'm dumping all my points into endurance. I kill some looters, as they're called, and encounter a door I need to hack into, because, of course, there's also hacking in this Cyberpunk immersive sim RPG FPS. The hacking is very weird. You have to use the hacking action and then select a target in the vicinity. The hacking minigame itself is basically an old-school Final Fantasy game. I'm serious, it functions exactly like the ATB combat system from the early FFs. You and your target battle by selecting various abilities that can attack them, lower their defenses, raise your offenses, it's a whole thing. And you have to reduce their HP to 0. Once that's done, we meet up with an ally and head to the temple. We meet our mentor, who we supposedly killed, or something? Is this a dream? A premonition? Another reality? He chastises us for failing, so I guess that explains the beginning with the bodies in the cave and all. From this conversation, we can gather that I is some kind of special psycho-cybernetic assassin organization, and that there is a civil war happening between its two divisions, the Coulter Day, who we belong to, and the Jianshengdi. Why should I care about this? I don't know. Let's keep playing to find out. We never find out. After failing our mission in the cave, we've lost our memory, but luckily we recorded a message beforehand on our personal drone unit, a Scrab. We use a semicolon incorrectly and refresh our own memory on the basics of the universe. The Secreta Secretorum, who created E.Y.E, are waging war against the Human Federation because the feds are greedy, I guess, and this has cooled the internal conflict at E.Y.E. Our commander, Rimana, who the mentor dislikes, put us on a special task force to destabilize the Johns, and in fact, our mission at the cave was to kill a John mentor. Our final message is to serve the commander Rimana and distrust our mentor. There's a line that suggests us in the past already knew what we were going to forget. I can't tell if that's intentional or a shoddy translation. After this, we have our first actual meeting with Rimana. One problem with this game's narrative that starts here is that the actual conflicts of the setting are not expanded upon. E.Y.E doesn't like the Federation because greed? At most, we know that the mentor wants peace within E.Y.E, but Rimana is anti-John, so they dislike each other. But the Coulters don't like John in the first place because... Anyway, Rimana will be giving us our missions from now on, and we'll go to him when we're ready to take off. In the meantime, we get to explore Temple HQ for the first time. It is an absolutely massive map that serves as an interim point and central hub for missions. While there aren't many points of interest, the physical space between some of them is huge. We meet a John we're apparently friendly with called Orianos, and he fills us in on something the other characters keep bringing up, the Metastrumonic Force. They're a type of monster that travels through dimensions from a realm of unknown, possibly psychic origin, and reflects the fears and vices of humanity. The one we saw in the cave was a Manduko, a reflection of our hidden self that also represents cannibalism. This has some significance later, but god, it is a lot of information to be throwing at the player. A heaping pile of proper nouns, characters, factions, systems, mechanics, hotkeys. My brain is swimming. Oh hey, there's a library with history terminals. Maybe now I can finally get a basic overview of what's going on. Alright, let's see, it's simple. Space colonization continued through 2250, even sharing some of the knowledge and technologies known to them with the humans. Have a planetary explained that the army of fighting vessels was the Nemesis, which only the rare human forming to almost all of the federal authorities power in the new era. Okay, here's what I managed to piece together after reading these lore entries, which are not numbered in the order they happen, by the way. We are in an alternate future where humanity has conquered the stars with cyber implants and psychic powers. In order to quell uprisings from rebellious planets, the Human Federation creates an army of cybernetically augmented warrior monks with psychic powers called E.Y.E by enlisting the help of a secret society called the Secreta Secretorum. They're very secret. E.Y.E gets dissolved because the feds are afraid of their influence. Then the Metastrumonic... Or wait, is it the... Strumomic? The Strombolis attack, and E.Y.E is forced to fight them. Then they get dissolved again because the feds are suspicious of them, but not really because they have enough influence now to act independently and start waging a war against the Federation. The second time E.Y.E came back together, they were divided into two factions, the Coulter Day and the Jianshengdi, and as previously stated, they don't like each other for some reason. None of this stuff is important to the plot. I didn't even bring up the aliens. Oh, and everyone in the future uses ergonomic keyboards. If you go down to the shooting range, you'll meet Juan Lopan. Every single dialogue option you have with this guy is hostile. There's references elsewhere in the game to you two being friends at some point, but one of the first things you can say to him is, "fucking bastard," and "save your breath, You'll need it when I make you scream like a pussy. Time for our first real story mission. Ramana sends you on a mission to confront a mole in the organization who's stolen a cyber brain from a Secreta member. He also wants you to keep an eye out for your mentor, who might be interested in the cyber brain himself. We begin the first real mission of the game in an industrial zone, controlled by looters and sieged by feds. An NPC gives us some objectives, as well as multiple ways we can go about them. For instance, there's an elevator system that'll take me up to where I want to go, the city of New Eden. However, it's going to be a fight to access it. On the other hand, I could hack a scrap unit or talk my way through the looters to get access. Regardless, these missions are where the game actually starts to open up and get cool. The maps are large and intricately designed with lots of nooks and crannies. Many of them make great use of vertical space to become quite dense. And this does not result in a loss of scope. They span several interconnected areas. The player is very free to navigate these as they want to. Once we get to New Eden proper, you'll find NPCs dotted around, ready to give side missions. I go about completing various objectives for the mission, like finding a ladder to the mole. There was also an elevator I could have taken, and I run into some problems. First of all, this game does not have set enemy location. Enemies spawn in out of sight most of the time, and always know where the player is. They will snap to attention from 100 feet away. They can smell you. This was a doozy when I was still getting the hang of the shooting. I tries to be more immersive by having your focus switch when you aim down sights, so you aim and can't see anything. This does limit your spread as far as I can tell, but that combined with the fireworks show from your muzzle flash, combined with dropping frames, made early combat very disorienting. The gunplay itself is fine. Weapons feel fine. They spit bullets, have multiple fire modes. Sound design is decent, with some ones I really like. Movement is decent, but the perpetual stream of enemies can get ridiculous. Eventually, I found myself low on ammo and charging enemies with my sword because, oh, healing is very strange in this game. Your one means of healing at the beginning is a psychic ability called Alchemy that turns enemy drops into health. Actually pretty useful solution to all the different ammo and weapon types in the game. As soon as you afford it, you need to invest money into researching the medkit. Oh god, okay. Research is another system that went completely over my head for the most part. I never quite understood it and often forgot it was there after getting the medkit. You need to choose a research topic and assign a number of scientists to it. Then, after spending brazoofs and waiting some time, I don't know how in-game time is calculated, you get the thing. There's this whole chart of research topics that unlock other ones and require certain items, and it's a lot. Oh yeah, brazoofs are money. Apparently it's a very old-timey slang for money in French. Until I get the medkit, I need to slug it out by healing with alchemy. I make my way up the elevator and arrive at New Eden. Wait, what the fuck is that? I just... Ugh. This guy in front of the door says he couldn't do anything about the oncoming federal agents and— Whoa! Whoa, 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 whoa! Actually, it's fine. Don't know what that was about. New Eden is our first real taste of a typical E.Y.E mission. The size, density, and atmosphere are all great, on top of the side missions you can accept. The enemy spawning made this a rocky experience, though, especially without the medkit. Often, I'd just be walking around and a sniper would start drilling into me from afar, or I was trying to do a side quest and enemies would trail me forever. When I found myself in more interesting areas for combat, I didn't feel like I could approach it from any safe angle because I was always in danger of having more enemies spawn in behind me. I try to hack a bank terminal and fail, causing me to get counter-hacked, and I have to wait with this filter over my screen for a minute and a half. Actually. Oh wait, I could have fixed this by performing maintenance, which will heal mental injury as well as physical bleeding if your legs break. How stupid of me. Immersive sim. I get the cyber brain and take it back to my mentor, who scans it and finds an address of an informer. I interrogate the informant and he gives me the address of an apartment where he stores a briefcase. What is in this briefcase? Why would we want it? Why does he think we'd want it? Because it's I, Divine Cybermancy. You gain Brazoofs.
The inner machinations of my mind are an enigma.
Oh yeah, so despite this game having real-time combat with aiming and all that, they still decided to include dice rolls to hit enemies. This means that if you were 100% going to land a shot or were close enough to attack, oops, dice roll, failed attack, and if the RNG was really bad, ultra failed attack. I find the case in the apartment complex and send it to my mentor, who finds addresses of a strange alpha prototype terminal. What do these words mean? I, Divine Cybermancy. You gain Brazoofs. With that, we've completed the mission and return to Temple HQ. This is where I started my second session. I fixed the framerate issue. It turns out that the game wasn't taking a high enough priority on my computer, so adding a little command to the launch options in Steam fixed things. Rimana doesn't trust our mentor after the Cyberbrain incident, so our next mission won't involve him. We need to go to a looter stronghold to assassinate their leader while secretly stealing some data. What data? Documents. Okay. In every single mission and map, there's an objective to use the armory that you can never complete. I'm pretty sure this is just because the devs wanted to always have a waypoint for the armory, but programmed it in a way where they only show up for objectives. We get to call Low Pawn a miserable creep, and he calls us a After checking out some new NPC dialogue, I decide not to do the next story mission. Instead, I try out a cornerstone of this game's loop: repeatable missions. See, in other games, such large, detailed maps would be used as hub areas, but I only uses the temple as a hub. Once a map is completed in the story, you can go back to it as many times as you'd like, with new objectives. These repeatable missions are where I actually started to get a hang on the game, and where it started getting enjoyable. Sure, the enemy spawn system can get a little overbearing, especially without stealth or detection upgrades, but I found that just wandering around, doing objectives, was fun. This game is fun. When it wants to be. Sometimes it decides, oh, time for you to die, and throws an army at you. Like here. I am just being sieged by enemies on a long sight line. This is one of the downsides to the spawning system. Enemies with a myriad of behaviors can be dumped on you without any regard for each other or the environment. I am willing to admit that I tend to be biased towards games with more thoughtful, placed enemies who are hand-picked by the designer for interesting combat encounters, so this aspect of the game I did not care for. Once that's done, I load the next mission in the bandit stronghold, Forgotten Center. An I operative explains that I'll be going undercover for this mission. I'm acting as a member of the John, who the looters believe has been disgraced. Right off the bat, you see the door you need to get through to kill the leader, but it's sealed for now. We're gonna need to do some objectives before we have a chance to get in there. This game's tile hog goes really wild sometimes. We get coiled down to fix something in the maintenance tunnel and hey, has anyone ever mentioned that you have a Stromboli problem? Like a lot. You guys have a lot. Try asking the landlord about that. This is our first introduction to the Cynicals. Nothing particularly special about them as an enemy type, but they're important later on. Of all the enemies, I find them the most unnerving. They remind me of a Silent Hill nurse. Things get really hectic as I make my way to the tunnel. Oops, sorry! I guess these guys didn't mind. Thanks for letting me off the hook, fellas. Now could you let me through the door? This NPC doesn't really matter, but I want to point out how strange he looks. This model gets reused throughout the game, and there's something so unsettling about a white guy with ping-pong eyes and an afro. And why does everyone in the game rock back and forth in their portrait? No one in this game has a visible mouth, so they probably thought they should make everyone have a really exaggerated talking animation, but it comes off as every character looking like they're on PCP. As we enter the tunnel, a body falls from the ceiling. I'll admit, I felt tense during this little section. It would have helped if the Strombolis hadn't shown up earlier, but at least this is a new one. Am I off when I say these things look like Tyranids? Actually, back in the library, the writer tends to refer to people with psychic powers as parapsychic or something along those lines, but there's a single sentence where he uses the term psyker, and the Strombolis come from a realm of pure psychic energy, kind of like the warp from 40K. And the devs were big sci-fi tabletop nerds. Huh. Maybe this one mention is the mask slipping, like when an author accidentally calls their self-insert by their own name. Next up, we need to fend off waves of Strombolis while this guy closes the door on them. The Strombolis vary so much in design it gives me whiplash. We've got Baby Arms McGee, Tyranids, Silent Hill Nurse with the Peace, and now werewolves. Just a straight-up werewolf. What does this one represent? My repressed furry urges? You're supposed to hold them off for 3 minutes, but I quickly get overwhelmed after all the NPCs die off. I resort to hacking away at them with my sword until I take too much damage and lose my mental balance meter. Oh yeah, that's a thing. It's really annoying when it happens. You get this disorienting filter and your character will randomly attack. You can get rid of it by performing maintenance, but I'm not really in a position to do that now. I run out of resurrectors for the first time, and the game boots me unceremoniously to a loading screen. I emerge in the valley, where a new NPC is waiting. He tells the player that what we just saw was a glimpse into a bad future. I respawn at the beginning of the level, but I don't have to redo it again. At first I thought that, just like the repeat missions, story missions have random objectives except for the end goal. This is not the case. I just has a very strange, unintuitive save system. So there are mid-level checkpoints. Sometimes, but the player isn't told when they happen. The game also saves your objective progress when you interact with the armory. Specifically, I think when you take something out of it or get something, that's when it saves. Note how I specified objective progress, because the game only seems to be programmed to have one spawn point, maybe 2 on some maps, and you will always restart there. The only difference is that all the objectives you completed are saved, and you can just pick up from the spawn point. This led me to believe the game would change every time you game over, but that's not the case. In any event, the set piece where you're trying to hold off the Strombolis has a successful and unsuccessful outcome. If you can't keep them out, you have to hold them off for longer until they start dwindling down. If you can, you save a few minutes. There's a save point after either one of those happens, and when you respawn, you don't have to do it again. You can just head for the next objective. Weird. This is the point where I realize that melee weapons are a lot more ammo efficient for dealing with hordes of Strombolis. The next 20 or so minutes I spend running around finding generators to turn on and cutting down enough Strombolis to be considered a genocide. I make it into the room where they're keeping the data and draw the attention of a looter, who happens to be standing around. Either the definition of 3 seconds has changed in the future, or this game is lying to me. Regardless, the entire base is on high alert now, and my operator for the mission tells me I have to kill them all. Now, I don't know what that means in the context of a game where enemies spawn infinitely. I'm not helped by this scrab unit popping up to tell me that hacking is in progress. 10 minutes? Who are you? Are you my scrab unit? An enemy one? What are you hacking? Is this a threat? An instruction? Eventually, I find the console I'm supposed to hack. Maybe I'm just dumb, or I missed something, or the devs forgot to explain this, but I didn't know I had to hack this. I did actually open the hacking menu, but I had no idea that this, which is just labeled console, was also boss's door control. I end up hanging around for over 30 minutes, retracing my steps and wandering all over the level. Also, what was that message about waiting 10 minutes? Did I have to wait 10 minutes for something? I have no clue. This never comes up again. At long last, I realize that I need to hack this console, which is in fact called Boss's Door Control, and make it up to his lair where I kill him. Well, technically a grenade from one of his goons killed him. Poetic? Back at HQ, Ramana tells us that not only are the Johns working with a bandit leader, our mentor is their middleman. Now he needs us to go kill the leader. At this point, I start thinking about how hollow this game's story is. We really know nothing about these people. Like, yeah, this guy is my mentor, who I've supposedly known for a long time, but I, the player, don't have any real attachment to him. I've pretty much met him one time, and he called me stupid. In addition, despite the Coulter-John conflict being so central to why I'm going on these missions, I don't know anything about them either. Do they have different cultures, different backgrounds, different styles of warfare? Why was I divided into 2 factions anyway? What's their purpose, and what sparked their civil war? Why should I, as the main character, care about anything I'm doing? I even have a friend in the Johns. Does that make me feel conflicted about what I'm doing? The writers, who I assume had been playing their RPG for years, were familiar with all these things, and, in telling the story, put the cart before the horse. I don't need to know pages and pages of lore about the peace treaty the aliens signed with the humans, or this weird story of how the first person killed by the Strombolis was a murder rapist on his way to bury a body? What? As the player, I need to know who I am, how I fit into the world, what the central conflict is, and why I should care. Maybe there's a character I like in one of these factions. Maybe one has an ideology that resonates with me. Maybe I'm given a choice that poses an interesting philosophical question. Maybe one of them just fits my playstyle better. Just anything for me to latch on to. But you don't get that. The story is the equivalent of a YouTube channel who finds and reports on petty Twitter drama and expects their audience to care about some random e-celeb they've never heard of. It leaves the gameplay to hold up the experience, and when that starts to break down, I found myself wondering why I was playing it, if not to make this video. After our mission in the Forgotten Center, an NPC appears in the temple called the Oracle. He tells a story about the wife of an unnamed warrior who was trained by our mentor. This warrior sends their wife down into a series of caves under the temple, which is strictly forbidden. When she's discovered, he has her executed after her eyes are gouged out. This story is reflected in the Cynicals, who are pretty clearly taking on the wife's form. When we question our mentor about him being a middleman, he mysteriously has to go with no time to explain. I go back to Forgotten Center to see the other objectives, and the beginning is this rat hole of Johns who can tear through my health. They're always coming in packs, and I keep running out of ammo. I'm barely out of the first room, guys. I ended up slashing through them. Hey, did I mention you can block bullets with a sword? That's dope. Another point about this game's method of spawning enemies: enemies of different factions will attack each other. In this mission alone, there are Johns, Feds, and Strombolis. They're all trying to kill each other and you, and they keep spawning in on top of each other. This is a spoiler, but apparently, and heads can correct me if I'm wrong, the more enemies you kill, the higher the spawn rate gets. So all of this is going on while you're making it worse. At one point, all the waypoints disappear and I have to restart the chapter over again, which doesn't just start you at the mission. You start back at Temple HQ and have to go back to the entrance, sitting through 2 loading screens. The enemy spawning is way less aggressive this time, and I'm pretty sure it's because I reset. Like, I'm walking around and there's no one here. It's almost eerie. Then I find an NPC, and it's over. This game has some jarring swings in difficulty. On to the next mission, Electric Sheep. This one has us working to take out the looter chief. We're also trying to increase tensions between the looters and feds, because I guess the federal police have just been cool with bandits hanging out. Just like before, we're given several ways to accomplish the mission. I tried to convince a fed to work together under the table, but he doesn't like my dialogue options. This is a weird flaw because I'm not sure how much you should hold it against the game, but it does mean that the negotiation approach is almost always a crapshoot because of how awkward the translation is. It feels very directly translated, but oftentimes direct doesn't carry a lot of important nuance. This level is also my first run-in with the helicopters. I didn't learn until much later that you can shoot these things down if you snipe their wings, which is something that would have helped. If you walk into the sight of the helicopters, it's practically instant death. They fire a million shots at once, and missiles, which are invisible a lot of the time, and I think that's a bug. Not much on the Electric Sheep revisit other than this part where I got overwhelmed by enemy spawns and spent a lot of time huddling in a corner waiting for my mental health to recover. The game proudly proclaims its psychological and trauma management. I got enough of that in real life. At Temple HQ, we have another conversation with Lopan where he warns us about our recent meddling with the John. Listen, Juan, one day we will meet again, outside. And that day, I'll slice your throat from ear to ear and then open up your fat belly and put a grenade inside. Holy shit! The only accident I fear will be your head falling into a vat of acid with me wearing your fucking moron face as a party mask. What the fuck? Romana tells us about the next mission. The Johns have their eyes on Vindico, a mega corporation that's part of a corporate cabal known as the Consortium. Romana believes that Vindico found something while digging under the surface of Mars and transferred it to a lab on a planet called Sulico. We were introduced to Dutch, who gives us some background on the objective. This level, Monolith, is a standard sci-fi horror sequence. There's a facility that went quiet, we sent an advanced team in and haven't heard anything since. Now the player has to go in and find out what happened, with a nuke ready in case we need to cover our tracks. It's a pretty obvious Aliens homage, seeing as the name Sulico is a reference to the ship from the movie. At mission start is an NPC called Dreamer. Talking to him reveals that we think our mentor is on a solo mission here, but that shouldn't be true. Why are we saying that? Even stranger, Dreamer tells us that our mentor died a while ago. Another NPC, Zariel, questions why we talk to ourselves so much. I couldn't tell if this was some kind of reference or stilted characterization, but it'll be important later on. Ignoring that, we hack a door and the defense turrets to crack open the facility. First thing we find are logs that cue us in on what happened. It's also the best and worst translated text in the game. 11:46 a.m. A large squadron of colonial federal soldiers arrived today from the 3rd and 7th entrances and were tasked to reach the underground expansion site. Personnel are more and more anxious. No information filters. 2:24 p.m. Gun and rifle shots could be heard from the construction sites. Oh my fucking god, this is horrible, damn it! Stuff broke through the facility and are killing people at sight. Never saw these things before. The whole military squad is dead! And these things are killing everybody requesting assistance immediately. Time is 4 p.m., I guess. Oh my god, they plunged the factory in pitch black. They are just shadows moving on the ceilings and walls. Jeez, Kirk just died and I'm typing this as fast as I can. I has a pistol with me, but these creatures are just too fast. They can't kill them. They are forcing the doors around me as I am writing this to everybody. This place is dead, requesting immediate assistance. I can't get outside, a storm occurs, but if I stay here, those shadows will kill me. Damn, I can't decide, I'm lost, oh please help me, I swear. Damn, these fucking workers underneath, they freed these things and now they're here to kill us, kill us, kill us. Fucking kill us, man. I'm going out even if it'll die too there. Over. 9:12 p.m. I'm coming. I'm going to kill you all, you fuckers. I will crush you, destroy you, and obliterate you. We're coming. 11:33 p.m. I must apologize. My previous messages were the result of alcohol abuse. I feel better now, and everything is alright here. Once we're deeper into the facility, Dutch brings up how many exploits we've been on together. This is like in Attack of the Clones when George Lucas skipped over the entirety of Anakin and Obi-Wan's friendship and had to establish years of history in 1 minute. Honestly, this mission really taps into the great atmosphere in this game. The darkness, the soundscape, this map has so many halls and corners that there was always this creeping dread of something just around the next turn. Scraboob. I mean, at this point, I know it's going to be Strombolis, but the tension leading up to their reveal is great, especially plunging deep into the maintenance shafts below. The immersion is broken a little bit by the gloriously low detail fries, but hey, they're trying. Surprise, surprise, things go south and we have to battle our way out of the facility when the Strombolis attack. This is effectively an escort mission, but with this game's AI... Dutch! Dutch! Get over here! Yeah, finally, no. Just ignore it and run. Fine, I'll do it myself. Oops. I gotta go. Alright, in the clear. Wait, I need to go back in to plant the bomb? It's a nuke! Alright, elevator, where's the switch? What, did I have an aneurysm? Is that another mechanic they didn't tell me about? Down by the bomb site, there's a survivor from the advanced team who's lost his mind and goes on and on about killing everything in sight. This last stretch is really weird. I guess when the devs hand place enemies, they just drop them in a grid. They're also all I members, plus a turret that's constantly raining missiles down on you, and an invisible giant with 2 hammers. And it's pitch black. After planting the bomb, we complete the mission and are immediately booted to the next one, Noctis Labyrinthus, which is on Mars. I have no idea how much time has passed or how I got out of Vindico. It's very jarring and disorienting. Also, Dutch is back. Despite dying on the last mission, he mentions that our mentor is supposedly here on direct orders from the Secreta. Because Vindico was dealing weapons under the table with E.Y.E, they got raided by the Federation and stole the artifact. So now we're here to retrieve it. Anyway, now that we're here, we've got Dutch for the mission. Oh. Dude just can't catch a break. Once we get into the bunker, we get the down low on what our objectives are. We are investigating points of interest related to Vindico, and also a cave occupied by a looter gang known as the Black Ugly Rasta Warriors.
No, Frenchman, no, I...
Oh god, not the 30-tooth company. I spend the next few minutes getting sexually harassed by a helicopter because I still don't know you can shoot them down. Eventually, after many retries, I push past it and into the valley. First stop, the Black Ugly Rasta Warriors. Come on. Now, supposedly, you can negotiate with the looters, but translation. Most interactions will end up with you killing everyone. The only reason you're here is because there's an antenna that can pick up federal communications, but it's an annoyingly hard hack, so screw it. Thankfully, every objective has a portal that leads back to the bunker, so you can restock and save your progress as you go. At least the devs are throwing you a bone for what is the longest mission in the game. Outside the looter cave, we're introduced to the final new enemy type of the game, the Cyber Demon. It's literally the Cyber Demon from Doom. Look at this thing. And there's another one. And feds. I think I'll just hide out behind a rock while they slaughter each other. A few good headshots with the sniper takes one down and clears the way to a cluster of objectives at this federal base. Inside, you find a damaged AI who tells us where the artifact is. There's also a building that hides a federal officer who makes you an offer to join their side. Accepting will take you to one of the 3 main endings of the game, but I'd like to see the rest of it, thank you. Down the steps of a nearby temple, you find a long staircase to an elevator that takes us even further down. The underground temple is full of werewolves and hammer guys. If we descend even deeper, we'll find a throne room that prompts us with a new objective. Talk to the Immortal King. This is a giant skeleton on a throne who is called the Immortal King, and he watches over his dead people in the tomb? He tells us that some E.Y.E operatives stole the artifact from the tomb and offers to teach us the way? What is the way? The way to where? Did we ask for this? This feels like something ripped straight out of one of the devs' campaigns and thrown into the story with no regard. Because it's E.Y.E, Divine Cybermancy. You gain Brazoofs. He tells us we have to sacrifice 27 humans in his name. Luckily, there's a convenient teleporter placed right here that lets me go back to the bunker, and then to the federal base. Time to increase the spawn rate. Yeah, you literally have to kill 27 human enemies to complete the task. This is also where I realized that there are multiple HUD options. I've been using the classic one for the whole game. Let's see what full is. Your health is represented by the damage the monkey has taken? Who thought this was a good idea? This HUD is so much harder to use, but we're basically in the home stretch, so why not? After a lot of camping with the sniper, I finally returned to the king. Okay, so I had to play this game full screen for most of my sessions because it doesn't scale properly in windowed mode. Stuff gets cut off at the bottom. And when I'm recording in full screen, I'll be alt-tabbing now and again, either to take notes, look things up, or just, take a break. Because I is a very funny Eurojank title, alt-tabbing breaks the game, unless you pause beforehand. I knew that completing the king's objective would take me to one of the two endings, and I got a little paranoid that I had maybe forgotten to unpause the recording. So I definitely want to get that, right? So, like a complete bozo, I alt-tabbed without pausing the game first. It was recording. This caused a glitch where the text in the dialogue boxes wouldn't appear. And because I was standing in front of the king, I instantly started talking to him, because if you recall, I bound the interact key to Alt, and when I Alt-tabbed, it picked up the input. Also, I was stuck in place afterward for some reason, and I needed to restart from the last checkpoint, which is thankfully right after I completed the objective. A quick jog outside the tomb takes me to a portal just like the one from the valley. I'm thrust into a new area with my mentor. Romana somehow knows what's going on and tells me to question him about the artifact and kill him. At this point, the player is given a choice between the two other endings of the game: question your mentor and kill him, or join him against Romana. Now, because of my bozo-ness, I am going to complete this plot-crucial scene without knowing what the dialogue is. After looking it up, it's not that important. He basically says that the artifact was never there, and that Romana shouldn't be trusted and we should all just get along. When presented with this monumental, game-changing decision, I thought, I guess I'll join the mentor? All of the problems of this game's weak plotline really come to a head here. I just don't know why I should care. But I guess Romana is more of a jerk, so... Ah, sweet, I'm top ranked on Cladam's ladder. This takes you to the penultimate mission of the game. It's not named for some reason. The dialogue is still bugging out, but we're here in a ruined colony to look for an XI member named Akmal, who can give us info on breaking into the temple. Akmal hates Mentor for some reason, so we've got to go it alone while he takes off. This level is staggering. When I compare it to the other maps in the game, it's about on par in terms of size and complexity. What makes me bug out so much is that this is such an insignificant level. I mean, really, it's a couple objectives you need to do for some NPCs. You know, interrogate some guys, find some switches, that kind of thing. But it's huge! There's all of these buildings with fully modeled, detailed interiors, alternate passageways, nooks and crannies abound. And why? I get that you can replay this level later, but it's so unnecessary for the plot. It's like the main story was wrapped around the New Game Plus experience. I spent so much time wandering around, getting lost, and learning its layout until I finally found my way through. Turns out Akmal is hiding at the bottom of a garbage pit that's usually filled with water. How do you leave this place? Where do you get food? There's a few interesting things to learn from Akmal. For one, he trained our mentor, who in turn trained us, Lopan and Romana. According to him, we work together frequently. He also blames the mentor for Romana's obsession with power and search for meaning. Does Romana want power? I mean, I guess? He wants to destroy the Johns. I'm curious about who this guy is, so I ask him about his past, but he keeps getting hung up on me interrupting him and calls us stupid. Everyone in this game calls me stupid. Finally, we enter the home stretch, Temple HQ. Our mentor is waiting for us, but when we try to talk to him, he calls us the King of the Rats and starts a fight. This comes out of nowhere, but after killing him, there's a scrab unit with a message to explain. So, Mentor went to the temple alone to face Romana. Wait, weren't we trying to find Akmal so we could get into the temple in the first place? So was he lying? Why? Why would he face Romana alone? Because apparently he lost. He tells us that when we killed him, his power went into us, and now we have the strength to defeat Romana. This is so stupid. He didn't wait for us because he couldn't come to fight Romana with you. In killing him, we have also washed away his sins? What is he talking about? Like, guilt he feels for making Romana a monster? This game's plot is fucking awful. Well, according to him, we are now nearly equal to Romana. Time to face off. But before that, because this game needs extra padding, we have to defeat 4 mini-bosses called the Pillars. Okay, I've been going pretty easy on this game in terms of the difficulty and the pacing and whatnot. But at this point, I have to be real. Because this is the mission where the gameplay completely falls apart. The Temple Assault is non-stop waves of slaughter. These enemies can kill you in seconds. The game itself tells you to fight them one-on-one, and then throws armies of them at you. And these guys don't fall over easy either. Look at this. I'm pumping this fucker with enough lead to make Flint, Michigan blush, and he just won't die. What the fuck? Need I remind you, this game spawns more enemies the more you kill, so it's only getting more intense as you go on. The pillars are even tankier, and there's 4 of them to take down, all spread out. What's so disappointing about this is that the whole mission structure to this point goes out the window. Multiple ways to approach the objective? Gone. Straight combat through and through. It's not a coalescence of the game's mechanics and ideas. It's the designers going, we need a hard final level. Just throw a bunch of enemies at the player. It's the most ridiculous, ham-fisted, brick wall difficulty spike I have ever seen in any game. The only way I was able to brute force through it was by switching to the minigun and abusing the armory placements. Kill one of the pillars, run to the armory, try to make it as far as I can to the next, repeat. It's so funny that right after you're told that you've gotten this crazy power up from your mentor, that the game makes you feel like an ant on the bottom of a boot. But get this, killing him does actually get you a new ability. It's called Triangular Gate, and it can kill almost anything in one blow. The game never tells you about it. No prompt, no hint, just a vague statement from the mentor telling us we've gained his power. I went through this whole section without even realizing I unlocked it. With all 4 pillars defeated, we're finally free to confront Romana. It is kind of a cool moment, jumping into the depths of the underground caves where he sent his wife so many years ago. Oh yeah, that character was totally him, by the way. Inside the boss room, he summons some bodyguards, and it's a fight like every other one in the game. Just, these guys have a lot of health. I actually kill Romana quite unceremoniously at some point, and I end up in a very tense firefight with his last remaining bodyguard. It's really only tense because I'm on my last resurrector, and I really don't want to redo this part. After a few minutes, I down him, and the game tells me to activate this scroll. Alright, the conclusion. It's the credits? I spend some time reading the rather small list of team members, and who the fuck are you? After leaving the tomb, we finish the level, but it's not over. Back in Temple HQ, things are very quiet. There's some NPCs to talk to, and they provide some interesting information. We ask where the commander is, but this guy says the office has been empty for years, and that we've been seen going in and talking to ourselves. Not only that, but our mentor was killed long before our mission in the cave. It's at this point that I start getting a sinking feeling. This was all a dream, wasn't it? When we insist that we've been getting orders from a commander, this guy tells us we're lost between two worlds. Finally, this guy is having dreams of a mysterious man, just like us. After speaking with him, our final objective appears. Return to the room where we fought Ramana. But this time, there's a giant portal, just like the one from the valley and the tomb. Stepping through takes us to the valley, where Mentor, Ramana, and the mysterious man are waiting. Mentor tells us to ask ourselves who we are. The mysterious man tells us that this is an opportunity to accept the truth, and that rebirth is another chance, but it can just as easily become an Ouroboros, looping forever. Finally, Ramana asks us if we've been lost since the very beginning. With nothing left to do, I step through the portal. Okay, let's talk about this. There are 4 endings to this game, 3 normal ones and 1 true one. There's one where you kill your mentor and storm the Jian Temple. I guess they have their own temple. There's also one where you join the Federation and still end up killing your mentor. Once all of these have been achieved, you can play the game a 4th time and get the true ending. In this one, you meet Ramana's wife, Cersei, who explains what's actually going on. So, let's start from the beginning. All this background fluff stuff happens with I. Within I, there's a guy named Ramana who's especially strong and develops a lust for power. This leads to him doing a lot of bad things, including sending his wife down into the caves under the temple, which he knows can get her killed. At some point, the mentor finds out what's going on, and Ramana kills him. Vindico finds an artifact below the surface of Mars, and Ramana comes to believe that by controlling it, he'll gain some sort of ultimate power. The Jians take the artifact, and Ramana storms their temple in order to recover it. However, the artifact is beyond human understanding and can't really be controlled. In retaliation, it traps Ramana in an endless cycle of karmic rebirth, where he's forced to relive the shameful actions of his life over and over again until he can break free from his sin. This is why every time you finish the game, it starts over from the beginning. We are essentially playing through Ramana's dream, where he exists as a separate character, a kind of denial or coping mechanism where he can separate himself from the evil things he's done. As long as the player, Ramana, chooses to follow his influence, they'll always end up at the same destination, with the mentor dead and trapped in the artifact's loop. Even by defeating himself in the temple, it's ultimately a meaningless victory because he hasn't changed. There are some hints throughout the game as to what's going on. The amnesia, for one, but also characters who say you've been talking to yourself, which I guess is quite literal here. Dutch dying at Vindico and reappearing on Mars is not a plot hole, apparently, according to the developers. It is an intentional detail to suggest that Dutch's real death was on Mars. On the Vindico mission, there are 2 NPCs, Dreamer and Zariel. Dreamer is obvious, but Zariel is an anagram of Azrael, an Abrahamic angel of death. Specifically, he is the one who separates souls from their bodies. Romana's name is itself an anagram for Ahriman, the prototypical evil spirit of Zoroastrianism, a faith generally believed to be the basis of Abrahamic religion. The first enemy you encounter is a Stromboli, a creature born from psychic energy who reflects humanity's darkness. You could even interpret the cave at the beginning as Romana trying to claw his way up from the hell he's created for himself by his own failure. Each time you die, the stranger tells you that what you saw was just a vision of a potential future, suggesting that every moment you play the game is Romana exploring ways it could have gone differently. Each death or failure just a single thread that weaves into the greater spiral of his curse. In the final, true ending, the player, Romana, has the chance to break the cycle, and accepting Circe's offer takes you to a rock. Just a rock floating in space. Nothing to see, nothing to do. This is where you'll spend the rest of your eternity. Purgatory. Contemplating your sins. You don't get a second chance. Unless... Man, I'm really conflicted about this game. I divine Cybermancy is an experience like no other. It is highly ambitious, but does it achieve its ambition? Was that ambition even good in the first place? I take grievance with this game in two main areas. The first is the story. The story the game is trying to tell is interesting. The problem is that the story you're actually playing is boring. It lacks any interesting characters or motivation to do anything you've been told to. You have to play the game 4 times for things to come together to get even a semblance of an explanation for what's going on. That's a lot of investment to ask of your players, and if the story was more of a background thing, I'd say, sure, let the player enjoy the gameplay and piece together the story as a bonus. But it's not in the background, it's always coming up. You have these conversations with characters with these WRPG dialogue trees. There's this whole plotline that's supposed to be unfolding about the Coulters and the Geons. It's the whole reason you're doing most of the things in the game. Not only are you thrust into this overly convoluted universe, they've chosen to tell a very surreal story that barely explores that universe. You're seeing it through the eyes of a dreaming madman. So with that being a total dud, it's up to the gameplay to hold up the experience. I'll be honest. Me playing this game one time through is not the best gauge of how it holds up in the long run. E.Y.E is designed to really open up on repeat play. The player has so many abilities at their disposal and so many ways of interacting with everything that the levels are basically sandboxes. When I got stuck on Forgotten Center, I tried to look up a walkthrough of some kind and found a video of someone who was level 87 walking up to the door at the start of the mission, turning on cyber vision, and shooting the leader in the head through a wall. And then he jumped 30 feet into the air and ran to the exit while stealthed. This game is fucking nuts. E.Y.E is like Shoegaze. Yeah. Shoegaze is a genre of music that is incredibly noisy, but not usually frantic. There's always lots of sound, but none of the parts really stick out from one another. In many cases, even the vocals can be gibberish, just another instrument to add to the musical soup of ideas. It comes together to make a song where you sit back and let your mind explore the individual parts as much as the whole. E.Y.E is a game that's either going to work for you or it won't. I love the idea of a game where you play it multiple times with these big open sandbox levels and tons of abilities, and that being tied into the story with the main character being trapped in this cycle of rebirth. That's such a cool concept. But in practice, it's hard for me to get past the stiff, awkward design and the boring story. I mean, that whole, like, killing enemies makes more spawn thing. Like, I get what you were trying to do with this whole theme of karma and stuff like that, but you think you took it a little too far. Now, you, on the other hand, might love this game. In fact, just watching this video might help you curtail your expectations properly going into it. As long as you can put up with a janky, fucked up, weird game with an unprecedented amount of player freedom, be my guest. Strumon Studios would actually go on to develop the Warhammer 40k games, Space Hulk Deathwing and Necromunda Hired Gun, two of the better received 40k games in the last couple years. Guess those homages were like cosmic foreshadowing. At the end of the day, am I glad I played E.Y.E Divine Cybermancy? Yeah, sure. I love this kind of out there game. I mean, I forgot to mention this, but every time you load into the game, it connects you to a server. That's because the devs were Half-Life 2 modders, and they wanted the game to have co-op, so it's built specifically on the multiplayer codebase of the Half-Life 2 SDK. If you want to, you can play this game with up to 32 players at once? Did 32 people even buy this game? When would you ever get that many people together to play E.Y.E Divine Cybermancy? No, this isn't going to be a sub-goal. I'm not going to instruct 31 other people how to port forward for E.Y.E Divine Cybermancy. Podcast, Patreon, bye.
Here comes a daredevil! Game over!